You're listening to Together by AGCI. I'm Marissa Butterworth. Today, my co-host Melissa Rush and I had a chance to sit down and chat with two of AGCI's international adoption specialists, Stefania Montaña and Hector Chacon. Before joining AGCI, Stefania worked as an adoption coordinator for one of the most influential NGOs in Colombia, participating in their adoption committee. Her dream is to change orphans' lives and work for their best interests. Hector migrated from Ecuador to the U.S. when he was 12. He has spent the last 10 years serving underage Latin American immigrants through resettlement across the U.S. He serves everyone he works with from a lens of cultural competency and compassion, informed by his work with families and communities. We are so lucky to have them both on our team. These two rock stars recently joined Melissa and I to chat through how to mentally prepare for international travel, what questions to ask, how to navigate cultural differences, plus they told us what food to try in their native countries of Colombia and Ecuador. Whether you are a family in the adoption process or just planning to travel abroad, this episode is for you. I can't wait for you to hear from them.
Hector and Stefania, we are so excited to have you guys on the podcast and hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, so we would love to have you guys start by just telling us a little bit about you, what your role is, your background in this work, and where you're from. So yeah, whoever would like to start, we'd love to. Yes.
Who wants to go first? Yeah.
I can jump in. So my name is Hector Chacon. I am originally from Ecuador. I moved to the States when I was about 13 years old. I've been in the childcare field for a little over 10 years now with AGCI since January. Prior to this, I worked with immigrant children down at the border, and I worked many different capacities during that time. The most recent being doing home studies. So that kind of got me to travel and meet families really all over the U.S. And that's kind of what got me relocated up here to the Pacific Northwest and kind of gave me the opportunity to get to know AGCI and what they're doing and to now be a part of this.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Wow. What about you,
I
Stefania?
am Stefania Montaña. I was born and raised in Bogota, Colombia. I studied language in Italy, and then I decided to go back to my country to help those in need, especially kids. I always been passionate about the social field, so I started to work in the adoption field in 2018 when I joined one of the adoption houses in Bogota, and I became the adoption coordinator, and that was the point when I decided that I wanted to follow my dream and help as many kids as I could to find them a family. So I also joined AGCI at the beginning of the current year. I'm so happy to be part of this amazing team, and I just moved to the States since the current year, so it has been a new and totally new experience, so I'm very excited about it.
That's amazing. We are so lucky to have both of you. And I know when I met you guys earlier this year, it was so exciting. And you are both so kind in this mind. And we really appreciate you doing this with us and helping us way. So thank you so much. So basically, we're leaning on your knowledge of like what it looks like to go to another country and how to be like respectful, how to adapt, how to travel well. And so when a family learns that they'll be traveling soon, what is the first thing that you would recommend that they do to prepare for it?
So I think from my perspective, the most important thing would be to essentially just come with an open mind, pack an open mind, be receptive to new experiences. It's definitely going to be something that's completely out of their comfort zone. Some families, we have a lot of families who have a special connection with the country because they either know somebody from the culture or they've already traveled there before. Some have even worked there for years, lived there for a certain amount of time. But I definitely think that being receptive to new experiences, to new food, culture, people, is really one of the biggest things that they can do to prepare.
That's great. What about you, Stefania? Do you have anything that you would
I agree
say?
with Hector, and I also think that the preparation for a family, it's never done. Actually, it starts since day one and before day one, actually. And preparation will always be there in every step of the process, and especially during traveling. Maybe we can give some heads up, and the team will be always there giving advice, even though we consider that the experience will always be individual, but also enriched because of the information or the conversation that they can have with other families, for example, that have already had that experience. So maybe talking to American families that have gone through the same process. So preparation is not always going to be complete when a family travels. So it's important, as Hector said, to be open-minded and be able to be ready for everything. Everything can happen. So.
Yeah, and that's a great attitude, I think, to take into so many aspects of life, right? To just like have an open mind and open heart and be, there's things you don't know what you don't know, and how can you learn and grow? That kind of rhymed. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that rhyme.
I like it. I was just really impressed with you.
I'm going to recite a poem now.
Yes, but I love that because you're not making like an assumption going into it. You're like going into it like realizing that you don't know everything. And I love what you said too. Like as soon as you start this process, you need to be preparing for this. This is something that you should be preparing for, getting to know your child's country and culture and doing that ahead of time, and then also keeping an open mind. I really love what both of you said. That's so
Yeah, I think moving along with that also, it's important for families to understand that in the long term, the child that they're bringing is going to lose a huge part of their culture. They're going to, have to assimilate to a whole new culture, a whole new language, the American culture, and they're going to be losing a huge, huge part of their identity. I feel like one of the best things that a family can do is to, like we said, really be receptive and really be open to making an effort to not only experience the culture, but to really gain something from it, something that can carry with the children for the long term.
Oh, I love that. And that's such an important point. I think sometimes, obviously it is a beautiful day and a miracle when a child is united with their forever family and they are starting that journey. But there also is a deep sadness that they will not get to grow up within their first culture. You guys are kind of both in a unique position in that you guys are both in such a unique position in that you now, are working in Hector in the Ecuador program, Stefania in the Colombia program, and those are your, that's where you're from. You're both native Spanish speakers. So just having that unique perspective, what do you think, what's like the number one thing, if you had to choose, that you wish families that understood before traveling to Ecuador, traveling to Colombia, or even just in general, like traveling to a new country where they're going to bring their child home?
Yeah, I think that the culture and community is very different, obviously, in different countries, especially kind of what's portrayed in the media here. I feel is a little bit different, and that can sometimes be one of the things that limits people to be able to have like the full experience of whatever may be ahead, right? So I think that would be, in my perspective at least, one of the first things that I would want them to understand is that just because things are different doesn't necessarily mean that it's worse. They're just different.
And also maybe avoid all kind of prejudice that people can have about South American experiences. Of course, South America is a completely different world, but it will be nice to go, as Hector said, open-minded and not being afraid that something will happen to them, and to understand that, as he says, I mean, the news can give you a little bit of a wrong information or wrong perspective of what the real country is. And actually, we have seen a lot of families that have traveled, and when they come back to Colombia, to the States, we normally have a check-in call with them, and they will tell us and share with us. We weren't expecting that experience. That was amazing, because they really like the experience that they have. In our team in Colombia, they also make the travel as smooth as possible for them to enjoy the time with the children, and also for the family to feel safe. So that's pretty nice to have the feedback of families saying, "Hey, your countries are amazing." So that's nice.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes. And I mean, when I've taken teams to these, I have not been to Ecuador. It's on my list, but teams to like Colombia or Ethiopia, it's funny because people are so worried about their safety, and that's a totally rational thing. But I'm like, check the travel warnings. Like sometimes U.S. cities are a higher
absolutely.
travel warning than, I mean, often. And so it's interesting. It's like, you don't think of your own country as being somewhere that's dangerous, but like we have a lot of stuff. We have stuff that people see on the news that they're like, I'm not going there. You guys just had a shooting or something's going on. And it's similar. It's like, you can't say the whole country. Like, yes, things happen in these countries.
Everywhere
but,
in the world. I mean,
like,
yeah.
Yes. But yeah, like go into it knowing, first of all, we're going to take care of you and make sure that you're as safe as possible, but also, and use wisdom and, you know, what you decide to do. Maybe don't go out on a run alone in an area that you don't know, but also it's a really like, don't judge it before you get there.
Yeah.
Like what it looks like. Because there have been some of the most amazing places I've ever been in my life have been, you know, other countries. And so, yeah, don't miss out on it because you're afraid of it.
And actually, talking about that kind of fear that is, we try to prepare families before having even a match in Colombia. Because a lot of families, while we're doing the check-in calls, while they're waiting for an assignment for a kid, they ask us, how's Colombia, how's Bogota? So we try to give them all the tools and make them feel that everything is going to be okay. Of course, they trust us, and we try to give them the best feedback. And of course, since we come from there, it's easier for them to make sure that we are giving the correct information. So that is also very nice, like not having one day before they are leaving, okay, how's Colombia? How do we behave? We try to make a whole description of the context, how that will be. So when the moment comes, they don't feel a lot of pressure, because if you think about it, they're going to see their child for the first time.
Yeah.
So there's not only
Yes.
of, you know, meeting their child, but also the context of being in a completely different context and in a different culture, surrounded by people that maybe they don't speak the same language. So it's fun, and it's nice to have been able to guide families through this beautiful journey, walking with them and make them feel trust and safe. TBRI.
Yes.
Yes. And just having that, I mean, I love how you guys both said, I mean, having an open mind, kind of being aware of your own, you know, biases that we all, I don't know if I said that word right, biases, I don't know, that we all, that it feels right.
It feels right.
That we all just have as human beings, and like, you know, looking at the information that's available in our incredible team and saying like, okay, you know, maybe I have felt this way for whatever reason, but that's not what the information is actually showing us. And how can I, you know, again, learn and grow and have an open heart.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's so important. So, I mean, I'm asking this next question thinking of my own travel mistakes, but what's the biggest mistake that you see again and again with families traveling to the developing world? Like what do you see, and what would you say maybe to do instead? It's kind of a hard question. Unless it's not. Unless you're like, well, let me tell you all the things.
Might have a long list. We don't know.
Yes.
No, so I don't think there's a specific mistake that we see often, but I think one of them is, again, just kind of going in with an understanding that it's a different place and things perhaps work a little bit differently than here in the U.S. An example that I can give in speaking to our foreign service provider over there in Ecuador, her name is Jimena. She let us know of an instance, not an AGCI family, but just in her experience of being at court, right? So you're at court with the judge, your lawyer, your kiddos, and the judge told them, okay, like this is the length of time that the rest of the process is going to take, and without consulting with the lawyer, one of the parents was like, okay, well, how much money do I need to pay to like expedite this process? Which in the U.S. might not be a huge thing because expediting is a fairly common thing that you see in government agencies here in the U.S., right? But over there, that could be seen as something completely different. So that definitely caused some friction, and that could be a little bit worrisome at times. So I would say to try to not commit any mistakes. Nobody's perfect, and we understand that. But I think it would always be a wise idea to run all these things through people that perhaps have a little more knowledge of the culture, like the people that are going to be helping them over there, supporting with their travel. Us here in the States, we have this particular ability that we know the cultural context of these countries. So we want our families to feel really secure in that. While they may perhaps not have the skills that are developed in countries like this, we do, and we're more than happy to share those with them. So we want them to count on those skills to be able to kind of manage around the community and the context.
That's great advice. What about you, Stefania? Do you have any big mistakes that you want to share with us?
I agree with Hector. I don't think they're mistakes, but are ways to learn. And I think cultural shock is one of those. I mean, as he was saying, there are things that for you guys, American people, it's completely normal, and for us, it's completely different. For example, I'll give you an example. The day of the encuentro, that is the day when the kid is going to meet the family, maybe the adoption house or ICBF, that is the central authority, is expecting the family to be well dressed and all perfect. And maybe there's a American family that will go trousers and flip-flops because it's hot, and maybe not. I mean, presentation matters a lot in Colombia, a lot. Like a CEO has always need to be perfectly dressed and presented and everything. So ICBF, if they find a family that maybe is not well dressed, they will say they won't take care of the children, and they won't do their exact job. I'm saying a very straightforward example, but it's the reality. And
yes,
it's important, and that's where our role comes up, and we try to explain this to families, and of course we have to do it in a way that it will be easy to explain that it's a cultural matter and there's nothing wrong with the way they dress or the way they behave. Because for Hector example, if the judge was very polite, because otherwise they can be like in a big mess. It's their adoption process that can be in a very hard position. So I don't think there is a mistake. It's always learning. And I think that the Colombian team is also there advising people how to behave, what to do, what to avoid, just to be cautious and not to give the wrong impression to people they are interacting with. So,
Well, that's great advice.
Yeah, I think that's so good too, because it takes all the pressure off of a family that's traveling, because they can just, like, okay, if I don't know what to do, don't assume that doing it the way I would know is the answer, and just ask them. Like, it makes it so much easier of like, what should I wear? What should I say? Or I need this. Is there a way, that I should go about it? Because they're wonderful resources for everyone to have. I love to. You're so much kinder than I am. I'm like talking about mistakes, and you're like, no, it's a learning. I'm like, nope, we messed it up. But no, I think that's the perfect route, and it makes it so. And it is you learning how to operate in another country, which is so fun. Like, to see how other people do it, and that there isn't, neither of them are right or wrong. It's just cultural, and you just are learning how to do it. And it'll benefit you in the future when you hopefully go back to your child's country. And, more, like, hey, this is how they did it there, and continue keeping an opening. Oh, I can't even talk. Continue to keep an open mind.
Yeah. And have the curiosity, like, to just be like, okay, like, there isn't one way to do things. The American way is certainly not the right way. There's no right or wrong way. It's just everyone's different. And having a again, I feel like I'm being so repetitive, having an open mind and being curious about like the different ways to do things. So as we talked about before, obviously, in the US, we have a child welfare system. We have children and families that are in need. But for so many people traveling to bring their adopted child home, it might be the first time that they're kind of face to face with that need, like in a children's home, seeing kids who, don't have families or have tough circumstances. When families ask, when they come back from that kind of, it can be shocking, I would say, experience, and ask how they can help. What do you guys recommend?
I think initially, sorry, it kind of brings us back to this whole, just being aware of where you are and that the customs are different and the things are just different in general. I think definitely running, I know sometimes perhaps being there, it's a little bit different when you actually see the need, and especially if you have the ability to do something right there and then, But I think being able to reach out to our partners, somebody to get an idea of what would be the best possible way to help, because the way that we might feel is the best way to help might not be what's actually culturally correct or what the best way to help. Each home is going to, not specifically countries, each country is going to be different. Colombia and Ecuador are right next to each other, so they're very, very similar. But even in that, there's lots of differences. You also see differences in just from home to home, right? Some homes might have a higher need of whatever it may be than others. So just keeping that in mind and really leaning on our staff, leaning on the knowledge that being in this field has really granted a lot of our staff. I think just being able to really be sure and lean on that would be really, really helpful in being able to address that properly.
What about you, Stefania? What do you tell? How do you direct families when they have that question?
It's very hard to answer that question because I think that families that start the path of adoption is because their heart is moved. And being there and seeing the context, and they're going to struggle because I'm telling you, the reality is completely different from the one in the States. So coming back and feeling that there's so much need, there's always going to be the desire to keep helping. And I'm going to give you an answer that it's kind of different from the one maybe that you're expecting, but I think that a beautiful way to help will be to share their experience and invite other families maybe to join the adoption process. If you think about it, when you share something that you really like and you say it with all this passion, you get convinced that what someone is telling you, maybe it makes sense. And for example, we have the example of a family that came to a long time ago. They went to an American family, went to Colombia, and they adopted a sibling group, older kids, and they came back and they started to live their life. And after I think a year or something like that, part of the same family, the uncles of these adopted kids, went into the adoption process and went in Colombia and started the process. And that's a way to help, because the kids that are waiting for a forever family are a lot. And I would love to invite families to join and to consider this path as a project in their lives, because there are so many kids, especially older kids, that are just waiting for another. They are just waiting, and their desire is to have a family. So I think that by sharing this knowledge, this experience, and knowing also the kids and how they're amazing they are, it makes you wanna join this path. So I will go and convince people to, not convince, but talk about it and explain, and maybe something will ring in their minds and they will start doing it. So.
Yeah, that's such good advice.
I love that. And I would say too, you guys are like the experts, but I've heard this from other people on your team, so I'm totally stealing it from someone else. But like, don't assume, like when you're in country, sometimes when you visit a place, they'll say to you like, hey, we need help funding this, or we need help building this. And sometimes it's like, oh, they need $500 to build something, like I can do that. I can solve that problem. But I would just say again to take your advice and talk to the person that you're with that's with you to find out if you are wanting to donate to a project in your child's country, find out the best way to do it, because sometimes it might be something that will solve a short-term problem, but you could give that money to solving more of a long-term problem or something they've been trying to get funded that will have like more power behind it or affect more kids and more lives. So if you're like, gosh, that seems easy, like just step back from that. Like I would applaud your desire to help, first of all, because that's incredible. But then also like come back and talk to the people that are the experts of how to invest your money into the country that your child is from, because you can make a bigger impact that way than sometimes things that are like a smaller short-term project that, maybe won't impact as many people. So would you guys agree with that, or am I just kind of making this up?
No,
No, yeah, definitely.
Appropriated. And I mean, they are the experts.
Okay.
So it's important to have that kind of advice in order to be sure that the small seed that they're going to give is going to be as proficient as it can be. So.
Well, and I mean, the other thing is when you're adopting, there are things like you guys were talking about before. Like if you're just at a home and offering to give them money, it can change, like laws can be broken. It can affect adoption in that country. Like there are bigger things that can create a problem. If you're not checking in. So yeah, just to make sure like your heart is in the right place, just check in first and make sure that that's the way to go about it and that it won't cause problems for future families in your program, if you're giving. But I won't keep talking. I have another question for you guys. So are there any like resources that you point families to better understand the countries they're traveling to for their child? So I know like as an adoption agency that we kind of bombard them, but is there anything that pops up for you of like, hey, start here, this is a great place?
I think, like you said, we bombard them with information of the country, specifically as it pertains to adoption. I feel like a lot of our families, by the time that they're done, they have a pretty good understanding of essentially the process from beginning to end, right? They understand how long the process takes, the processing steps towards adoption, all of that. They have a pretty clear understanding. So I would say, outside of that, just having fun with it. I mean, just looking for documentaries, podcasts, travel blogs, whatever it may be that gives you an idea of the cultural context or the culture aside from the adoption. And we understand that that's the primary purpose they're going. But in order for them to be able to really enjoy the experience and to really connect, like we mentioned earlier, I think it would be ideal for families to just do some research, watch some whatever, maybe a cooking show or travel blog, whatever it may be, that kind of gets your juices flowing and kind of getting an idea of what you want to do over there, how you plan to kind of live this few weeks there.
I love that. That's great advice. What about you, Stefania?
Yeah, I would say also feedback from other families. That for me it's the biggest treasure. Like maybe a family, because here in the States you do it this way, and a family will say, hey, no, you don't have to do it this way, do it that way. That will be, those tips are very specific and very useful. So I will say to have this kind of community with other families, and we actually have in AGCI virtual community where families can communicate while they're in country or before they're traveling or through the adoption process, and this helps a lot. So hearing back from families, it's the best thing for me.
Oh, I love it. So cool. I have one follow-up question to it. So for families traveling to Ecuador or to Colombia, what is something that you're like, you have to do this while you're there? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Like For tourism, I don't understand very well.
Either whatever it is, if it's tourist, if it's like you have to try this food while you're there, you have to go to this place. Is there a spot that you're like, while you're there, make sure you do this? And this is also very selfish because I'm like, what are you guys going to say if I get to be there?
For me, I would say for Ecuador, I would say it depends on kind of what kind of spirit you have, like what you're into. I love food. I feel like food is like my favorite thing ever. So when I travel to Ecuador, and anybody that
Yeah, I'm like, I'm with you.
Following.
there you go. Okay. Anybody that travels to Ecuador, I always tell them, okay, do something that perhaps you can't do anywhere else, right? So in Ecuador, one of our typical dishes is guinea pig, so which is something that Americans keep as pets, and we understand that can be a little bit hard to digest a little bit. But after you get past that aspect of it, it's probably an opportunity that you're not going to get many times in your life. Whether you like it or don't like it, I feel like just to be able to come back and say like, hey, like I tried this, that's kind of cool. Tourism wise, it really is going to depend where you're at in the country. For Ecuador, you would be staying in the city of the zone where the child's home is at, so it can really vary anywhere that you're at. One of the cool things in Ecuador is one of the very touristy things in Ecuador is La Mitad del Mundo, which is the half of the world. So we have the monument that's right at the equator line, and you can see cool things. Like kids love that because you go there and you can like stand an egg on top of like a pin or like on top of a needle. You can flush a toilet and watch it go the other way, which
really?
is kind of
I didn't know that was real. That's
I'm
so
like,
cool.
So, just kind of those very like kind of activities that kids would really, really like. I feel like that would definitely be one of them, especially if they're going to have their kiddos. Like their high chances are that even though the kids have been living there for a certain amount of years, they haven't done certain things. So it's something like that to kind of give them a reminder of where they come from, I think would be really, really a cool memory for not just the family, but for the kids too.
That's so cool. What about you, Stefania?
Well, I will say that for Colombia is the most beautiful country on earth. So there are a lot of
It is beautiful.
things to do. And I have to say that our team is very good at preparing the different activities they can do while they're waiting the process, each part of the process. And depending on where the kid is living, they can visit different parts of Colombia that are amazing. There will always be something to do. And actually, they're very lucky because the legal process is in La Mesa, that is a small town near Bogota, and is literally in the middle of the jungle. So it's an experience that families come back and they just love it because it's so different from. You don't have a nicest jungle as we have, so it's just.
No, we do
We
not.
do not. We need more jungle. Come on.
And
That's so cool. I didn't know that.
And well, you will also have to spend time in Bogota, the capital, and I will say that as Hector says, depend of the spirit that you are, but I think that being able to be in touch with local people and being able to talk to locals, it's amazing, and you can do this in small local markets. Well, you will spend a lot of money because everything is beautiful. All these
Yes.
artisanal, you say? Artisanal.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
With, and everything, and you will find music, food, super delicious food. And I would say that if we're talking about fruit for me is the most different thing that you will find in South America because there's so many fruits. You have to be careful because your stomach is not used to it. So be careful and you get excited, but it's very good. So there are a lot of things to do, but I will say that being in touch and knowing, getting out maybe of the tourist trap and do something more local, like going to these kind of small markets, it's nice.
I love that. I love both of those things. And I love that you both included food because I'm with you.
Me
Like,
too.
I love trying different food. And like, there have been things I've tried that I'm like, okay, that's a hard pass. I'm never going to have that again. And then things I've tried that I'm like, that's the most delicious thing I've ever had. And like, in South America, there are fruits that we don't have here. It's like so many different things that you're like, oh my gosh. And you're right. You have to be careful, but like try all the things. Like, yeah, it's so many exotic fruits and foods that we just don't have access to here.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, not to keep
Thank you,
talking
guys.
about fruit, but I think like anytime you go anywhere else in the world, you should seek out like the fruits that are native there because of it's hard to transport whatever. That's like one of my favorite things to do. So anyway, try all the fruits.
Yes.
Not to like, I know we're kind of staying on this topic, but I think it's such an important topic. Not fruit.
I was going to say, are you going to ask more about fruit? I'm in for it. I'm like, going to talk more about it, but
podcast. No. I just think like learning about the culture that the child you're bringing home is from. And I know this episode is about preparing, before you go, but I think, finding ways to keep that at the forefront of your family and integrate your child's, first culture. Do you guys have, suggestions of ways to kind of keep that just part of day-to-day life?
So one of the things we usually talk about with our families is, kind of being able to get an understanding. I think it's important to get an understanding of the child's routine, right? So when they're coming, they should be aware of the routines that they're following in the home. So what time they shower, what time they eat. And along with that, things as simple as, hey, what's my kiddo's like favorite meal? Like, what does he like to eat? And learning to cook even one thing that you could kind of transport this kid back throughout his entire childhood and be like, hey, this is what you love. I learned to make this for you. And I think that's such a huge thing for a kid.
That's awesome.
I love that. And it is so loving to like go in and figure out how to make this. And when you're in country, if there's someone there too that's willing to like show you and teach you, that's even more valuable. And so many people are kind and willing to do that for adoptive families. So take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Go ahead, Stefania.
Preparation, as I told you, is a whole process. And while we are checking on families while they're waiting, that the waiting time can be a little bit overwhelming because it's a long time waiting. Families always say, hey, what can we do? And I think, and I suggest, start learning Spanish. This could be a great tool. Why? Because you will bond easily with your kid. Once you're in country, you will feel more empowered. So maybe you will be able to say, hey, where is the bathroom? And you won't need a person that will translate for you and have to follow you everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it also will make the kid feel that you family are making an effort to know not only the kid but also the culture, the language, the way he expresses. And it's important for the kid to feel that the family is making that kind of effort. And also it's very interesting to see how families decide to join the Colombian program because they feel bonded to. So maybe they have an experience or they know somebody from there, or they have their best friends are from there. So that's very nice to see how they have already some cultural, I will say, characteristics, or they understand, because something very different is to understand something and then to live in it. But maybe being able to be that the motivation to adopt in Colombia is because they're culturally bonded to something helps a lot. So that's very nice and interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you for going into that. I just think that's important to we put so much into going into it, but then it's like, okay, where do you go from here? How do you make sure that that's, part of your life? So I feel like we've touched on this a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, speaking Spanish will also help you to live the experience as a first person and not as a spectator, you say? Spectator? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So you will be able to merge into the Colombian culture, because when a person who speaks Spanish and they don't know English, it will be very difficult to communicate. And I study languages and I know how hard it can be to communicate. Even if I speak English, sometimes I struggle with English to trying to communicate in my best way. But of course, talking to the same language makes it easier. So being able to go and live the experience as a first person and not as a spectator can help a lot.
And what a cool gift to offer your child after they get home too. for them to continue being able, that they don't lose their
Yes.
language, like that you continue, they're going to learn English if they live in the US. Like you don't have to worry about them learning English, but I think what you do have to worry about is them losing their language. And that's a gift that you can give to your child by continuing, and a gift to yourself and to your other kids if you have them, and your whole family to start learning the language and like incorporating that just into who you are as a family. So I love that you added that. I think that's so important. And I did such a poor job. I am very bad. My daughter's Ethiopian, and so I don't speak Amharic, and I tried. It's such a hard language, so I'm so impressed with people that do. Like, I wish that was something that I could have offered to my daughter, and it's still not over. We may still just like take lessons online or something. But I just think that's such a huge gift as someone who hasn't done that. I wish that I took that more seriously when we were waiting. I think that's such a great gift, and something that never goes away that you've given your children and yourself.
Yeah, I think it's part of their identity, because behind a language there is something that is there and is part of their history and part of healing that past, because adoptive kids come from hard places. It's also to accept the reality and that identity that comes with them, with their language. So that's why I'm saying that if you learn Spanish, for them maybe it will be easier not only to bond but also to communicate maybe those traumas that kids have and how to overstep them and to work with them. So identity is I think that we think it's something very simple, but it's extremely complex. And I can tell that because, for example, I come from different cultures, because my mom is Italian, my dad is American, and I grew up in Colombia. So being able to understand my identity is very hard. So I understand when a kid, especially older kids that have lived a lot, have to change their own context and just move to another place with different people, different food, different life, because it's another life here. It's hard for them and for them to continue to form that identity. So
thank you for sharing that. And that is something important to think about, especially with older kids. Obviously it is a happy moment, but that is really hard. I mean, to be 10, 12 years old, move to a completely new place, not know the language, and then also have a family that isn't fully able to communicate. So to make that effort is a really loving thing to do, for sure. So thank you for talking about that. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I would love if there's any other kind of tips that you have for how to prepare people to make sure they are, being culturally sensitive and appropriate when traveling to another country, because, you don't know what you don't know, but having that open mind approach obviously is helpful. But if you guys have any other advice for that would be great to hear. And if you don't, that's okay.
And if you don't, that's fine.
I talk a lot about being open, and I don't want to repeat again, but
no worries.
I would say to be open and not to have any kind of judgment in anything. In life you have to be open to everything and not judge anything. So just to be open, and God will provide and will give you the experience that you will have to live in, and make it, I will say, make it the best experience, because it's the most beautiful experience you will have to meet your child. I mean, you are going to have, and Marisa can say it because she has done that. So it's a memory that you will have in your mind and will stick for the rest of your life with you. So just make it the perfect journey since the beginning.
Love that.
Hector, is there anything you'd like to add? It's okay if not.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that really about covers it. Like she said, just being open-minded is really going to be I think the biggest way that you can be culturally sensitive. Being open-minded, relying on the people that you have around you that's from that culture that are so willing to help you. I think that really is going to make the biggest difference.
That's great. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out to do this for us and share your wisdom and ideas. And I mean, I really appreciate the food suggestions and all of the things. I know, me too. But we just so appreciate you, and you guys are incredible resources. Yes. And I know from both of our, Melissa and my perspective, like we are just so grateful to have you on our team and sharing with us. So thank you for doing this today.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Together by AGCI. That was AGCI's Stefania Montaña and Hector Chacon. And I don't know about you, but I definitely learned a lot today, and I so appreciate their perspective and honesty with us. If you like what you heard today, please share our podcast. You can also go on and rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to read or watch even more stories of hope or learn about the work that we do at AGCI, go to our website at allgodschildren.org. Follow us on Instagram at All God's Children International. Thank you for listening.